When you see a thug breaking into your neighbor's house, killing and raping inhabitants, and ruining the whole place, would you rather take actions and make law enforcers get him and hold accountable for crimes, or you will get back to your place, close the doors, and discuss what happened with other neighbors, comforting yourself with a Philistine hope that a thug is now satisfied with only one house on your street and won't go further? If you choose the latter, well, then you are UN General Security Assembly or Council. If you choose the right of law and its enforcement onto criminals, then you are United States Ministry of Defense. Good afternoon. It is me, Henry Keene, as usual, on UATV English Wrap-Up, where we are doing our best to break the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. During a Senate hearing, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that if Putin wins in Ukraine, he would not stop and would attack NATO. I'm very glad that at bare facts are here in the Senate of the United States, because we have been stating exactly that for a year and a half by now. And that is why we're asking for more weaponry and equipment to protect not only ourselves. Ukrainian victory is a preventive measure for the entire continent. Supreme Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzhny notes that timely receipt of equipment is important. F-16s would have been relevant back then a year ago, and if we receive them in 6 months from now, then they won't radically change the position on the battlefield.
Yet, but holding back the supply of long-range missile system and tanks, the West allowed Russia to regroup and build up its defense in the aftermath of a sudden breakthrough in Kharkiv region in the north and in Kherson in the south late in 2022. Similarly, F-16 jets due next year are now less helpful, suggests the general, in part because Russia has improved its air defenses. An experimental version of the S-400 missile system can reach beyond the city of Dnipro, he warns. From the article, Ukraine's commander-in-chief on the breakthrough he needs to beat Russia in The Economist.
Putin launched a war not only against Ukraine, but also against global law as such. Any law, because the Kremlin violating them all, you name it. And the world that considers itself democratic should be based on the rule of law and not dictature. This war should end in victory over the aggressor and not in reaching any sort of temporary compromise with him. Don't be a stupid Philistine neighbor. Don't put your trust in the idea that a criminal will somehow satisfy its greed and lust for power with only some territories of Ukraine. Don't give up on the future of our world that belongs to them, who are capable of defending it. Responding to Putin's aggression in a proper manner requires constant spending, which actually is not burdening foreign taxpayers too much. It is a drop in the sea if you really can count. And if there are 5 drops there will be, we would have spent much earlier. The war would have been won long ago. Ukraine appreciates the efforts of the West in supporting Ukraine. However, we emphasize that the war with Russia is most burdensome for Ukrainians because we lose our people. Assistance to Ukraine is a demonstration of the West's resolute position not yield to the aggressor, criminal, a thug, an outdated usurper emperor in his ill-morally sick attempt to rebuild the Soviet Empire. A victory. Other scenarios will only encourage the Kremlin to scale up its expansion. Russia benefits from the transition to its positional war because, obviously, Russian invasion will stabilize and respite will help them to find more offensive reserves. And the war will escalate and will continue and will cost the world tenfold, hundredfold to what it's necessary to be spent now. Ukraine and its allies should not hesitate. We should not give the aggressor time to rest and recover. Only a radical increase in the capabilities of the defense forces of Ukraine and a counteroffensive can destroy Moscow's plans, because dictators won't stop unless stopped. Despite the exhausting defense against Russian aggression, Ukraine is consistently exercising a way to successful transformation and has already fulfilled all 7 recommendations of EU accession negotiations. On November 2nd, a conference of EU foreign ministers, a larger, stronger union, making the European Union fit for enlargement and future members fit for accession, was held in Berlin. Also, Brussels needs Ukraine's capacity to strengthen the community. By granting Ukraine the candidate status last year, the EU made it clear that our country would join the community. Ukraine expects to start accession negotiations by the end of 2023. Kyiv closely monitors and also participates in discussions on further EU reforms. The processes of internal transformations of the European community should not slow down Ukraine's path to membership. Expansion at the expense of Ukraine is an opportunity for the EU to become stronger. Ukraine's accession is not a burden for the European community in no way, but will complement it with additional benefits. All that and more was discussed during a conference of EU foreign ministers in Berlin with the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba.
I will raise with my fellow colleagues the point that among many policies that the European Union is implementing, we need a new, strong, consolidated policy, EU policy on cooperation of defense industries of EU countries and candidate countries, because we see that in order to defend itself, in order to resolve conflicts and deter aggressions in Europe, efforts in the area of defense industry need to be stepped up.
Dmytro Kuleba stressed, and I support his thought, that the EU citizens themselves would be the first to benefit from the enlargement, as it would mean strengthening the capabilities of the common market, human rights and the rule of law, and make the EU a stronger player in the world on all arenas, politically, military and economically, and frankly, also human. Ukrainians are the biggest Euro-optimists in Europe. They defend their country and spill their blood literally right now as you are watching this, because we believe in our European future. And only believers change the world. On November 4th, Russia marks National Unity Day. What a day it would be in Ukraine. Yes, you heard me right. We should celebrate it way more than Russians, because Putin's aggression against Ukraine has worsened the quality of life of ordinary Russians drastically, created great and unnecessary additional political and social tensions in and outside Russia, and ruined the life prospects of ordinary Russians. It is time to celebrate for Ukrainians. Couple of hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens fled from Putin regime after the start of the full-scale criminal war. However, the rest of Russian society has become the main resource that provides, I quote, safety and stability, end of quote, for Putin's regime. Intensive propaganda has created a so-called altered state of consciousness in a vast majority of Russian minds, and people seem to some degree to be aware of the terrible truth, but perceive it as the new norm. That new norm propaganda narratives are becoming more and more cynical every day and every month. Russian authorities no longer hide the fact that Russia started a war for new territories in order to silence the ongoing internal problems, both political and economical. That new norm propaganda literally is insisting for Russians to give up their personal well-being in exchange for a vague concept of some unity for the sake of absurd and sometimes suicidal geopolitical expansion, and all that without any reward. All that which is openly voiced in mainstream propaganda shows, but does not cause the slightest cognitive dissonance and inside the audience. According to polls, Russians no longer want any war, but in the same time, they are not ready to give up the criminally annexed territories either. More than half in response to the statement, if President Vladimir Putin decided this week to end the military conflict with Ukraine and return the annexed territories of Ukraine back to Ukraine, would you support or not support this decision? Russians says not support. When asked whether military operations should be continued or whether peace negotiations should be started, more than half of the respondents answered that they were in favor of negotiations. Well, what convenient but a bit of schizophrenia tactic. Ruin foreign lands, kill thousands of the people, abduct their children, and then go away like, what a peace, we want peace, why you're so cruel and angry at us? We're Russians. I'm absolutely confident that none of the Russians will agree to reparations and compensations just as well, because we are Russians and we have rights. Russians only want rights and no duties and responsibilities attached to them. Well, Russian people, it is your fault and thus responsibility that your morally sick Tsar began the war and you as nation or as a unity didn't stop him. Russian society does not even flinch when hearing reports of terrible, heinous war crimes committed by its authorities and fellow citizens, of which a vast majority of them are fully aware. Yes, many Russians went abroad. They are trying to distance themselves from their homeland in every possible way, and even invented a new Russian flag, because it all looks bad and is even worse in Russia. Outbreaks of anti-Semitism in Russia, threatening the Jewish community in this country. Russia forcibly registered millions of Ukrainians on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine as Russian citizens. Most of them openly hate the invaders and will always act to their detriment at any opportunity, and are actually partisans, hundreds of thousands of them. Russia is sowing the seeds of the civil war, initiated by Prigozhin's mutiny. All Russia's deeds once again reveal the colonial essence of it. The privileged position of Russian megacities such as Moscow and the ethnic periphery doomed to hopelessness. The peoples enslaved by the Russian Federation are gradually realizing their own interests and their striking difference from Moscow, or not, following the ancient Russian tradition of turning a blind eye on reality, but it never helps. Russians simply cannot win this war as they are fighting with reality itself, and that lady always wins. It was Henry Keane on UATV English, hoping to give you the hard truth in easy enough terms on a daily wrap-up today. Please comment. Please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters a lot to us. Stay safe and tune for more. See you soon.